Thank you so much for joining us today, Alli.
Yeah, so happy to be here.
I'm so happy to finally have you on. I know we've talked about this a long time ago, and then we never scheduled it, and I was like, what? Alli, this has got to happen, because I just saw you again down in Austin. I like to start by where I know the guests, and I met you in Austin in August at a Society of Women Entrepreneurs event, where you were wearing the fiercest boots I had ever seen. And I was like, who is the woman with the courage to like pull these boots off? Because they are just like, you cannot miss them, and they are amazing. And like, it was Alli. And it was. Can I hear you?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Can I hear you? I think you were just mouthing a thing for a second. Yes. So I really appreciate you coming on the show, because Alli is, as we just had this chit chat before we started, a very open book. And so our quitting chat is going to be wide ranging here, because I was on Alli's show maybe like 6 months ago, I think, ish. And near the end, she got me to start talking about my decision to not have kids. And that's something I'd never talked about before on one of these quitting podcasts. But it's a thing that I think needs to be, well, not needs, whatever. I want to bring it up. Whether or not it needs to be brought up, I would love to cover it. And we are going to get there as well. So, Alli, let's start with the fact that we were just chatting. And I was like, all right, what quit can we go back to, et cetera, et cetera. And Alli said, surprisingly, that she was in the middle of quitting who she is. And that's an interesting place to start. So tell us a wee bit about your background, and then how you've gotten to the point where you are quitting, quote unquote, who you are.
Yes. Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on. I always love your energy. I mean, in person, it's like so vibrant, and even online, it comes across all the time. And I'm just like, oh, I love people like that.
Thank you.
I also love people who dance however the fuck they want. That is a big, that's one of my big fangirl moments about you. So really, how I've been in the wellness industry for this month's going on 17 years. I had my 40th birthday this year, so I've been in since my early 20s. I started as a personal trainer, and then I got really into food, and I became a chef, and I got into nutrition, because like kind of it feels like this natural progression in the wellness industry is like people start with external body. If you just work out, you'll be awesome. And then they're like, oh shit, you can't get your body if you eat like garbage. So let's teach people how to work out. And then you get through all that, and then you go, oh shit, it's actually your mindset. And really, without this part never comes in. And then on top of that, then layer in the spiritual piece. So I've taken this very kind of windy road in the wellness industry, everything from being a private chef flying around to being a personal trainer and yoga instructor, and then coming back and having kind of this holistic wellness program. And then most recently, I opened with my partner in life and partner in work a ketamine infusion clinic that does alternative mental health treatment. And it's in this interesting path that I've really figured out that I think I'm done with wellness, which feels, that might be a weird kind of statement, being that now I'm in kind of the mental health space. But I just think I am over this idea of typical normal, the wellness industry, kind of the eating and the working out. And not that I don't think that that's important, and not that those two aren't huge pillars of my personal life. I just, after so many years of watching people struggle and struggle and struggle and do all of the surface things, come to me and say, oh, I can't sleep. Oh, I can't eat right. And then never really want to unpack the big whys around that. I'm just not interested in having that conversation anymore. I'm just really not interested. I don't want to write you a workout plan. I don't want to look at your food journal. I don't want to do anything like that. And the interesting thing, when you've built a brand, especially for so long, and mostly in Austin, Texas, just so well known in this space, that is pretty scary to walk off from and kind of really let go and really start to quit and reimagine what does that look like now, to kind of reinvent myself yet again at the age of 40, to do what I really think that I've put here on the planet to do, which is kind of inspire and educate people how to be brave and how to fully embrace themselves and how to like deal with their shit on a real level. And that definitely is my thing. And it was interesting I've been doing these like wellness programs, and it's funny because I go to like pitch them or, talk to people about them, and they're like, oh, so it's like a wellness program. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Come. No, we're not going to do it.
Yeah.
You're probably going to start crying. That's okay though. But what I realize is actually I'm giving people mixed messages right now, because I'm not really sure like where not that I feel like you have to pick a lane, but like what am I really embracing right now? And I think one of the things that I realized in these last few months is that I have to let go of her in order to fully like embrace this new thing, which to me feels like the next evolution of me and this higher version of myself. But man, the little ego part of me has a hard time not being fitness girl. So it's this interesting transitional point right now. I'm just over, and I'm kind of over the wellness industry as it stands. Not everybody, but as it stands right now. I'm a firm believer that we can't shame and scare people into being healthy, and I just feel like that's the common phrase that we're using is like, can we make people feel shitty enough about themselves so that they can be healthy? And I just think that's my just hell no on this point. Like, let's just like, that's not helping anyone. So can we just move on in a different direction and get me out of the conversation?
I love so much of that because it's so real. First off, heck yes for saying like, I don't want to write you a meal plan. I don't want to write you a workout plan. I mean, those are integral parts of some people's health journey, but you get to say, I don't want to do that anymore. Because guess what? There's like 8 billion people. Somebody else can do that.
There's Pinterest. Like,
right.
If information was the issue, we have Pinterest. Everybody's lives would be fucking perfect. I mean, it's like, if you can't find a workout plan or an eating plan online for free, you don't know how to use Google.
No, and there are still people who will make money off workout plans because that's where they are in their journey and that's what they enjoy. And that was you in a Alli 1.0 or maybe 1.5 at that point, some iteration of you enjoyed that. But then you get to say, hey, that's not what I want to do anymore. Like you said, this next phase is like the next step in your evolution. And something else you brought up there, you're like, now at 40, I'm like, reinventing myself. But think about with the fact that you are so quote unquote well, you've been in wellness for long enough that you've walked the walk and you're in good health. So you could work until you're 80, right? Oh, so this is like your halftime.
I'm super jazzed I'm fucking 40.
Yeah.
I'm like, every year that I've gotten pretty much better. So I am like awesome. I don't think I'm old at all. I love the fact that I'm 40. I love the fact that I keep reinventing myself. That feels very expansive and I don't get scared about that stuff. So it's awesome.
I love it.
Julia Child wasn't Julia Child until she was over the age of 40. So let's all just remember that.
Right. I think Vera Wang too.
Yes. There's like a huge list. And when I changed my career like the third time, my mom sent it to me and was like, it's okay, babe. There's still time.
I love it. I had that same thought like 2 or 3 days ago. I'm 41 and I was like, man, I am completely starting over at an age that I think my parents would have thought was like, quote unquote, over the hill and like, man, you should be holding on to your retirement. First off, I don't have any. Yeah. My last job did not come with one. So maybe 2.0 will come with a retirement fund of some sort. But yeah, I mean, with the longevity these days, who wants to do the same thing for what could be 60 years? People are working to their 80. They started when they were probably 20 something. If you don't have a career reinvention somewhere in there, boy.
That's boring.
I was going to say, you have a high tolerance for monotony at some point.
Yeah, maybe you're just really into one rabbit hole. I mean, which more power to you if that's your deal. But
yeah. And I mean, think about even people like Oprah, right? She's been, let's see, if we just generally say she's like personal development guru for other people, even her own thing has evolved in different ways. Okay, now I do a show, now I do a magazine, now I am not doing a show, and now I do these specials that I want to do. Like, if she just did that same show for 60 years, I think she would have to even admit she's a little bored, right? I mean, your mission can be the same, but your mission technically is the same. You want people to be well.
Oh, yeah.
But the execution can look different. So you said that there are parts of you that are still having a hard time kind of ego-wise letting go of Alli, the fitness queen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just like, it's just always been my persona. So having to like retell people. And also I noticed it was very interesting at Paleo FX this year. I'm usually on with like my 1-minute intro of like, people are like, what do you do? And I can fucking nail it. And this time I was like, I was like, well, I'm kind of in wellness and I have a ketamine clinic and I blah, blah, blah. You know, so I just feel, I think that unease is just because I don't know that I've done the work that I need to do to kind of solidify, or that vision hasn't fully come into kind of what exactly that is going to look like. And so because that, it's not as settled as it has been for a long time. So I think that's the main thing, is like, that was really solid. I knew what that was and I knew who she was and I could say what she wanted and her goals and dreams. And this new version needs a little more sussing out and probably some psychedelics and some journaling.
That's why I love Alli. I need some psychedelics and some journaling. We'll get this worked out. Because what you're talking about is your identity. And the identity quits are difficult, very difficult. I've had to like test mine out because I went to Paleo FX. We saw each other there. And people would say like, what do you do? And I would lead with like podcaster, which is not a thing I've ever led with before. And what was kind of funny is that the other night I see Mike Bledsoe and I was telling him I just quit my job and he's like, what job? And I was like, well, I was a doctor at the VA, and the look on his face, he's like, I didn't know you were a doctor. And I was like, oh man, yes. Like I pulled off like whole conversations with people.
Can't believe me.
Right. They just thought I was a podcaster. Well done. So, but it's, you know, like that's part, I remember going to that retreat with Connor. I went to the realness retreat when I went last year, and he had asked, will it be hard to like let go of the doctor identity? And same thing with you. It's like, I'm never going to not be a doctor, and you're not going to ever not believe in wellness. It's just, what do you kind of lead with, I think is.
Exactly. Yeah.
And yeah, that elevator pitch is hard because people want something easy to, oh, this is Alli the blank.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, everybody knows who I am. They're like, oh, she's the fitness person. She's the wellness girl that has the show thing. And I'm like, I don't have that anymore. And people are like, wait, what? Yeah.
Now you're the girl that injects ketamine into people to help them get mentally better. And I think that's super rad.
It's awesome. Yeah, and that was an interesting thing to quit too, was the show. You know, I had Wellness Posse Wednesday for about 2 years. I did like 90 episodes. It was awesome. Got to interview all my favorite people, like you. But I think we talked about this at Paleo Effect. It was this really interesting quit thing where it was like a universal quit. Like all of a sudden in January, like people canceled like 3 weeks in a row. And after that happened, I realized, like, I was relieved. Like, that was my emotion. When somebody would cancel, I'd be like, oh, thank God. I really didn't want to do that. And after the third one, I was like, hey, dum-dum. Maybe that's a clue that somebody's trying to give you. And I just went and canceled the whole rest of them. Like, I had another 6 months booked. And I just sent everybody, an email just saying, listen, I've changed what I'm doing. I really appreciate you, doing this, but I'm not going to be doing the show anymore. And, and then it was over and I was like, oh, good. Now I feel really free.
Yeah. That's always a huge thing. Like, how do you feel back afterward is key, because if you were like, oh man, now I really regret it and I really miss doing it, well, then you can unquit. But instead you felt free and you're like, no, that quit was right. That was right on. So, super randomly, well, speaking of wellness, in a very relevant space, because this will go out like next week, but there have been some things politically. We almost never, ever get political on the show, maybe never. I think you're the 79th or 80th guest that I'm going to have. And I was a Bernie delegate, so like it gets political pretty quickly in my land, or it used to, but tried to keep it neutral on this show. But Alli would like to discuss something, and I am stoked to have her discuss it, that is super relevant in regards to like women's health and stigma surrounding certain parts of women's health and quitting that stigma and helping society quit that stigma. So I think Alli and I are very aligned in the fact that we want to, you put it as how to help people be brave. And I want to help destigmatize things, which essentially is helping them be brave by reducing the stigma on the other side.
Completely.
Yeah, so we're kind of two sides of the same coin. So if you could tell a little bit about your story where we're going to destigmatize, we're going to quit the stigma around something else today.
Yeah, I just thought this would be an interesting topic given that it's so, don't go on Facebook and talk about this. This is not my, but everything that's been coming up over reproductive rights and the Alabama, banning abortion law. And we talked about on my show, which you brought up at the beginning, your decision not to have children and how as women now in our 40s, that becomes somehow of a public fucking conversation for people to give their input about, which I think is hilarious. That my decision not to have children out of my vagina is any of your business seems very funny that you think, I'm not going to talk to you about your gallbladder. I don't know that you should talk to me about children. I mean, it's very weird. And so, I just thought this would be a great opportunity is that, I went to culinary. I quit my career here in Austin as a trainer when I was 31. I had just gotten divorced. I decided I wanted a whole new life. I moved to California, went to culinary school. Broke for the first time in a long time, took out student loans, worked, went to culinary school, ended up meeting a wonderful man. We started dating. We'd been dating maybe a month. I had an IUD and I ended up getting pregnant. I was on an IUD, so I was using birth control. I was being responsible. And, the reality is I was down the rabbit hole with that guy when this happened. And there was a part of me, how old was I at that point? Maybe 34, 35. I had never, I'm getting up in an age where I'm like, well, if I'm going to have kids, I probably should do it at some point. He had a son, but we'd only been dating 2 months maybe. And I really thought at some point I walked in and I thought, maybe he'll say we're so in love, we can make this happen. And I told him and he said, no, he's like, we can do whatever you want, but I don't think it's a good idea. And the reality was that was fucking heartbreaking for me, but it was also 100% right. And what he said now sounds very harsh, and I think the way it came across was very harsh at the time, but it was also very honest. And what he said was, you're in California, you don't have a job. I just graduated from culinary school. I hadn't gotten a job yet. You have no support network here. And if you have my kid, you will not leave this state.
Yeah. That's
and
real.
That's the real deal. Because as a father, he was like, you're not taking my kid out of California. And I had to have a real hard look at myself and be like, does that feel like a great idea? Does it feel like a great idea to live in Northern California where it's so expensive in a relationship that I hope is going to work out? But I don't know because we don't know each other that well. And put myself in a financial situation and then in a social situation where I don't know anybody, I don't have any family close to me. Does that seem like a conducive place to thrive, not only as a person by myself, but as a mother and raising a kid? And the reality was it wasn't a good choice. Come to find out, the reality was that probably them taking out the IUD, the pregnancy wouldn't have been viable anyway, because it's a very traumatic thing for them to even be able to pull it out. I probably would have lost the fetus or the cell. At that point, it's like cells.
Yeah.
At that point, and it was fucking hard. It was hard, and it was sad, and it was traumatic, but it was the best choice. And it was the best choice for everyone involved. It was the best choice for him. It was the best choice for me. And it was the best choice for that baby, because I would have been a mess. And I don't think I would have been able to show up in the way that I would have wanted to be a mom. And come to find out years later, we were not a great match. And we did break up. And I moved back to California. And I met the man of my dreams, who has 2 children who are now basically my kids. And so I did get the kids, and I did get the fairy tale, but that fairy tale is not written like it is in Disney. You know, life is messy. And I think having that choice and deciding to make a choice that was the best for everyone involved is nobody's business who's not in that life. And that is my reality. And it's a hard choice as a woman not to have kids. And it's a harder choice when you know you maybe could have had them and you decided not to. I'll say when I go through menopause, there will be some mourning. There definitely will. And that the thing is, I don't think that there is a right way and a wrong way. I don't think if I chose to be a mom, I would be a better person. If I chose to not be a mom, I'm a worse person. There is loss and grief and joy in both decisions. Like, if I would have decided to have kids, it would have been fucking awesome. And then there would have been days that would have been like, what in the world have I done with my life? And there is the same thing on the other side. There's days that I look at families with little kids, especially now that I'm with Ken, and think, man, that would have been really amazing to have my own kid. But then I think, like, okay, so I got about 7 years, and then me and Ken are going to live in an Airstream and travel around the world and be like awesome adventure people. And that's also going to be awesome.
Yes. Yes. Oh, well, thank you for sharing that story.
You're welcome.
Because we were talking about beforehand is you were saying that you think that the average person out there, not the average person, but there are definitely people out there that assume abortion is something that you were saying, like, oh, only happens to really young people or low income or people who weren't being careful. And you're like, no, it happens to everybody.
Yeah, it can happen to anybody. It can happen to anybody. And I think, of course, given access to healthcare, education, good, stable family environments, it's far less likely to happen to a lot of people than it is to certain populations. And that is also our fault. And now we're condemning people that we did not give the skill set to then have this path that is really hard, and then saying, oh, let's make it harder by giving you a few children. I mean, I just think that's like the most asinine. I think if you believe in pro-life and you haven't adopted a kid from foster care, you need to shut the fuck up. That's actually exactly how I feel about it. Like, if you're so big on pro-life, go adopt a slew of kids from foster care, because there's 500,000 children in foster care, and about 60% of them will age out by age 18. So it's just one of those things. It's like, you got to be, if you're pro-life, then I need you to be all pro-life, and that means taking care of people after they're a bunch of cells, which includes their whole life.
Yes.
Yes. I also think breaking the stigma of what a person who got an abortion looks like is really important, especially right now. I mean, it's just like, I feel like we're living in the la la land. But the only thing that I can say is I think this is the final death grip of a bunch of old white men who are fucking terrified about the storm that is about to come raining down on them. And this is their last-ditch effort to grab onto all the power they can have, because their time is coming to an end. And they know it, and they're scared shitless. Because that's what happens when people are scared. They go after fucking power.
Ooh, that is true. That is very powerful. Because you're right. The landscape is going to change.
It's changing.
Yeah, absolutely. And a whole lot of the things that were stigmatized are losing stigma. I mean, think about, I was just listening to this podcast called, I forget what it's called, but do you remember the NXIVM cult? Did you?
Yeah.
Yes, right. That same podcast, after that, everybody just go look up NXIVM, but it's missing all the vowels. It's like NXVIUM. There are some vowels, but it's missing. It's the most fascinating podcast. But after that one ended, they had this thing on this slew of homosexual murders in Toronto back in the day. And Allie's like, now I'm bookmarking that one again.
I gotta watch that. I gotta listen to that. That sounds like my deal.
Yeah, it's super fascinating, but it was in a time where there was so much stigma about being homosexual that these crimes were going unsolved because nobody would talk to the police. Because the police had a stigma and they weren't getting along well with the homosexual community, and the homosexual community didn't like the police and vice versa, and there was all this stigma. Now they've got these task force and they work together and all that stuff, but that's because times change and things progress. Mm-hmm. And so I love that you are part of the fight to help destigmatize things, get things out in the open, change people's minds about what things look like, what it looks like to have an abortion, or to want kids or to not want kids, or to be a successful woman in whatever way that turns out for you, and to start over careers at 40 or whatever kinds of things.
Exactly. You do whatever the fuck you want. How about that?
Pretty much. This is why.
Well, be nice and do whatever you want. How about that?
I love your golden rule. Don't hurt people. Be nice and do whatever the fuck you want.
Sum it up.
Absolutely beautiful. So we've quit many things on this show. We've quit now stigma and wellness and your identity. But now that you're about to enter 2.0, is there a place people can find you or your ketamine clinic?
Yeah, I'm still all over the internet. It's just my name, Alli, ALLIWADDELL, on all the major channels. Our clinic is called Illuma, ILLUMMA. And it's doing really amazing work here in Austin. We just had an amazing client go through a series. He's a professional writer, and he wrote a large Medium article, an article on Medium that has been the most read article in the last week. So it's gotten almost 500,000 reads, and it's one of the most powerful things I've ever read about how his 30-year battle with depression is gone in a month.
Wow.
And then, and just to have somebody that's so good at language be able to write about something that is very hard to capture. I mean, most people come out and you're like, what happened? They're like, I have no idea. I don't know what just happened. It's very kind of ethereal and, and trippy. And so it's not easy to put words to, but he does just an absolutely beautiful, beautiful job.
Oh my goodness. We will have to link to that in the show notes because I would love to read that. And we can be the what did you say? 500,000 will be the 500,001 person too. I love it. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us, Alli.
Thank you. Love you.
Love you. All right, for everybody else out there, until next time, happy quitting.